Welcome to the Budget Mom YouTube channel. I'm Kamiko Love from thebudgetmom.com, and today we are doing a very special real life budget. In fact, today we're going to be doing our first ever follow-up to a real life budget that we had posted and talked about and shown on our YouTube channel back in July of 2020. We did a real life budget going over one of our community member, Jasmine's information, and we had displayed all of her budgeting numbers, her budgeting goals, debt, and income, and I showed how I would organize that into the budget by paycheck method. I am really happy that we have Jasmine here today. Now with COVID, we did end up doing a Zoom call, and I did a short Zoom interview interviewing Jasmine what her life has been like after airing her real life budget on my YouTube channel and where she is today. We also talk about any progress that she has made or any changes that has happened in her life since airing her real life budget back in July of 2020. Now, if you don't remember Jasmine's real life budget, here's a small breakdown. So Jasmine and her husband got married very, very young. They currently live in Nebraska. And when I did her real life budget, they had a very specific why. And their why for being on this financial journey was because her and her husband loved to travel. And they wanted to have more of that and more of that life freedom in their lives. So a lot has changed with Jasmine in the months since airing back in July, and I'm so excited to have her here on my YouTube channel to talk about her experience with the budget by paycheck method. I'll be back at the end of this video to recap Jasmine's progress and where she is today.
So thank you so much for allowing us to do this. And I think so many people are going to find what you share really valuable and really helpful. Why don't we start with a little bit of who you are, what your name is, where you live, and a little bit about your financial journey.
Yeah, so my name's Jasmine, and I live in Nebraska, just outside of Omaha. And my financial journey's been a bit weird. So I moved in with my now husband right out of high school. And so we always thought that we were doing good because we'd put our bills first. And so our bills were always paid on time, no matter what job we were working, whether we made tips or how much money we made, our bills were always paid. So we thought we're good, we're fine. And then we didn't really have credit cards for a while, but in 2015, we started to get credit cards and offers for them, and we were oh, we need to build credit if we want to buy a house. And we bought our house when we were engaged, and we saved up enough to pay for our wedding ourselves, and we thought that was amazing, and we went on an amazing honeymoon. But throughout all of this, we were just slowly accumulating debt, a small loan here that we didn't think was a big deal because we could afford to pay it. And we were had so many credit cards that we couldn't even keep them straight. And our home and cars, we just thought if you buy a car, you have to finance it. Is there even another way to buy a car? And then in September of 2019, or I guess that entire summer, as I was doing our bills, we've always had one account, and we always tried to keep enough to pay a month's worth of bills in that account. And I was noticing that it was getting harder and harder to keep that amount in there. And it felt like every time we got paid, it was eating all of our money, and I didn't understand why. So I sat down to look at all of our bills, and I realized the reason it was hard to keep that money in there was because I wasn't accounting for paying all of our credit card minimums. So I thought our bills were only $2,000, but really they were $2,700. And that was just eating all of our money every month. And I was oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And we started to I was we have to get rid of the credit cards. We can't afford to keep going like this. And I started to do research into like how to pay off credit cards and like should you like combine them into a loan and like what's the best strategy. And there was just like so much information out there that it was like hard to just get it all
Right.
together and come up with an actual plan. But in the end, we started in November 2019. We started really hard, like snowball paying off the cards, because we had some that had like 300 or like 700. And I was like, if we can get those out of the way, then we can move forward better. And since then, we've paid off all $29,000 in credit cards.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And that and a $1,400 loan. And the only thing we have left is our car. But that should be paid off in just a couple of months. And so within the next like 2 to 3 months, we'll have paid off $40,000 in debt. And it's been hard, but I realized early on that like I couldn't control a lot of it. Like I'd already made all the decisions to use those cards. I couldn't control like how much I had to pay for them, but I could control how much we were spending outside of that. And that's
Right.
when I like got really aggressive with our variable spending. And with our like groceries, we stopped eating out altogether. And then our groceries, I was like, okay, how can I bring this down? And the number one thing that helped me was doing like online grocery shopping, because if I personally go into a store, I'm going to spend over $100. I'll be like, oh, but I need this, and just grab it, or oh, but that looks good.
So tell
And
me a little bit. So we did your real life budget a couple months ago.
mhm.
Tell me why you decided to submit your information to the Budget Mom for the real life budget.
A lot of it was because if you do research online, it's just going to tell you pay off your debt now. And it's going to tell you like all of these steps that you should do and how aggressive you should be. But we wanted to like, we had dreams. Like we wanted to go to Greece this year, which COVID didn't happen. But it was important to us that we go on that trip. It was like a graduation present for my sister. And so I was like, we want to have those memories. I can't, she's only going to graduate high school once. Like,
Right.
let's do it. And then I was like, but I don't know, like, is this awful of me? And I'd been watching you since like January of 2020, and I loved how like you found a balance between being aggressive with your finances and actually like living life. And so I submitted it because I was like, I need somebody who knows what they're doing, their opinion. Like, is it dumb for me to go to Greece? Is it dumb for me to like not pay off every piece of debt before I live my life? Like, that's kind of why I reached out.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So it was more you just needed the solidification for someone else to come to you and say, hey, look, I know you're paying off debt, but it's also okay if you have these other dreams and ambitions as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So after seeing your budgeting numbers on YouTube and after we put it onto, a real life budget, one question I have is, what was your first reaction when you saw that video? And then my second question is, what action step did you immediately take after watching the real life budget?
So I felt immediately like reassured. I was like, okay, I'm on the right track. Like, like, okay, yes, I'm doing okay. And then I was like a little bit nervous because it's kind of like nerve-wracking to put that much information out there. But right after watching that, I like a lot of what you said like just made more sense to me. So I'd always budgeted when I got paid. So I was like, okay, I got paid. Now I'm going to take that money and put it places. And I was like, why aren't I planning? Like, I know when I get paid. Why am I not planning for it? So we immediately started planning what we would do before we got the money. And we did split up. You suggested that we split up like our sinking funds because we were just putting a little bit aside. We did split them up. So we created one that was like for Christmas and holidays, and then we did one that was for like home needs and emergencies. And
Love
so
that.
that helped because then we weren't like worried, because we do keep our monthly spending low, but then when things would pop up, it was eating out of our emergency fund, and then we'd have to replenish that, and I didn't like that. So that was like the biggest step that helped. And we did try to like split up our cash envelopes, but with two people it got so hard because I would like have one cash envelope on me and he'd have another one and he'd spend money, and it was, the receipts were getting jumbled. So we decided to continue doing our 3 categories, but we assigned each other responsibilities. So like I am responsible for the cats and making sure that they have like all of their cat food, and I'm also responsible for the house and making sure that we have like cleaning supplies. And he is in charge of the cars. So he does like gas, and he does like, oil changes and things, and he budgets for those. So that, but then we still have our own money to spend on the side.
That is amazing. That's the first time I've heard someone say that that's how they split up and do the cash envelopes, but it makes perfect sense. So that way you're not splitting up and having like, say, 2 food budget envelopes. You have one, but you're organizing and doing your system in a way where each person gets different responsibilities, which then delegates what cash envelope they're in charge of.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that idea. Okay. So after watching the real life budget, can you tell me what kind of progress you have made in your finances from watching that show up until now?
So we have completely paid off all of our credit cards. We are we still have our like starter emergency fund, but we've also built that up because that was just like our starting. We just wanted that much then. But eventually we plan to have like 6 months worth of expenses in it. We've also saved up, like we just have a vacation fund. Obviously it's not getting used, but that's just going to be like ongoing so that whenever COVID is over, we can still go and do things. And our car will be paid off in the next 2 months.
Wow, that is incredible. So, a lot of the time, this is the first time viewers will actually get to hear from an actual live, user, community, a TBM family community member that uses the budget by paycheck method. Let me know and tell me, when you started the budget by paycheck method, what was the hardest thing getting going in that process for you and your family?
So the hardest thing was like actually figuring out how to start it. Like I am obsessive, so I wanted to jump feet first. Like I was like, I'm gonna do all of the steps today. And my husband was like, I can't compute that much information right now. Like I can't do all of this right now. Like we need to like break it up. So I guess that was the hardest, was like getting on the same page. And then I think that like the next, like the one thing I'll say is that like I don't recommend jumping in. Like take it in bites so that you understand every step, because otherwise you're like struggling with a bunch. But it's worth it. Like it's so worth it to feel the peace of mind of knowing like, okay, I don't have to worry about paying all of that money, and it's not going to be weighing on me for the rest of my life. Like I can go out and save so much of money, like hundreds of dollars a month now that I was just blowing before. Like it's just interest. Here you go.
Right.
Take
I
the
know
money.
that, yeah, that was my to me, when on my debt payoff journey, that was the number one thing that made me the angriest, was knowing how much money I was throwing towards my payments that were going to interest, that I felt like, oh, I'm just handing money over for nothing. Like it's just poof, gone. And once you have and know that feeling that you no longer have to do that, it's really, really powerful. So I'm so glad that you got to experience that. And I'm really glad that you brought up the fact too, that the hardest step, the hardest thing really with the budget by paycheck method is the starting out process. Now I call it a budgeting transition phase. And it seems like for the first 60 to 90 days, and I think this is true with any program in life, whether it's budgeting or a new fitness program, or maybe you're learning something new in your life, that first 60 to 90 days, that transition period of moving from one phase of your life, or we can say one budgeting method to another, really takes some time to get the swing of things and to get into that scheduled routine. And in this case, knowing what bills to pay with what paycheck. I know that can be hard for a lot of people to organize that in a way where it works out every single time. So that is really, really incredible. So Jasmine, right now for you, you've accomplished so much. You've paid off your credit cards. After watching our real life budget, you were able to really start thinking and planning ahead and breaking some of your spending categories down further, which really helped. What's next for you after you get done with the credit cards? What are your big goals? And tell me too, one of the first steps in the budget by paycheck method is figuring out your why, your purpose for being on this journey. Tell me what your why is and what your future goals are now.
So our why has actually changed. So it started as we want to travel, because we've always talked about going to see places, and until our honeymoon, we never actually did. And then we loved it, like absolutely loved it. And so then we were like, I want to travel. And then we also, while we were in Scotland, we're like, this is amazing. Like just going there and seeing it, we were like, this feels like home. I want to live in Scotland. But that was like such a far off dream. I didn't think it was possible. And so then after we've paid off all of this and we've done all this work, I realized it is possible.
Wow.
And so our new why is that we want to move to Scotland, and all of our goals will lead up to that happening within the next 15 years.
So what an amazing goal and dream, especially too with the why. So now that we know your future goals, if you have one piece of advice for someone who has either just watched their own real life budget on YouTube or who is just starting this process, what would you tell them?
It may look like a lot and it may seem impossible or daunting. Like watching you do real life budgets is like, oh goodness, like she's taking all of my information and what am I going to do now? But it's like listen. So like I listened to your suggestions and then I like implemented what I thought fit best with us. We didn't choose to follow everything. We did decide to pay off the cards instead of saving for Grace. But like all of your other suggestions like worked, and like it's not too much. Like it's okay. Like it looks like a lot, but if you just stick with it and slowly but surely keep going, it's gonna work.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And me, especially, I know getting on YouTube, first time having a real life budget community member here on the Budget Mom YouTube. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for your time today and speaking with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was exciting.
So Jasmine has quite an amazing story and financial journey. I thought it was really, really remarkable how much and how different her why has become. So she started out with the why to travel, and it morphed into something, a really big dream that her and her husband had that they thought was literally so big it was impossible to reach. And it's crazy awesome that they're going to be able to reach that dream of living in Scotland here in just about 5 years. It's also remarkable how much progress they have made on their debt journey. being able to pay off all of that credit card debt, which if you don't remember, back in July, that was one of their pain points, was all of that credit card debt. So that's really amazing progress. I think the last thing to mention here is how Jasmine took my recommendation of prioritizing saving in their life, but not only that, how they organized savings in their life. And to recap, when I was talking through her with her interview, one of the things that stuck out to me was when she talked about breaking out all of her different savings goals, because it's true. When you transition from a debt journey into a savings journey, I think a lot of us face that question of what happens now? What do I do next? And reanalyzing your financial goals and your savings goals when you're making that transition is really important, and I'm so glad that she took that recommendation. If you would like to see more follow-ups to our real life budgets that we share here on YouTube, make sure to drop them in the comments so we know, so we can get that into our schedule and make sure to share more of those with you. If you found this video helpful, please like it and don't forget to subscribe. I'll be back at the end of this video to recap. I said crap. It's also remarkable. I'll start that over.